My name is Dani Liesh, and I help companies to build and launch their own mobile apps. And I also help software engineers to learn and get better at mobile app development. Today, I'm going to show you what are your options for building a mobile app and what should you choose depending on your own situation. This will allow you to either take your business to the next level or to have more success in your career. So here's how I'm going to do it. First, talking about why is this important, then going through how can you build it, how can you build a mobile app, and finally discussing what would be the best option for you in a few different situations. Now, you probably know that people spend a lot of time on their phones today. And here's how much. According to a couple of studies, the average person spends more than 3 hours per day on his phone. It has more than 60 apps installed, and the majority of people prefer to shop on mobile instead of web. Now, I want to ask you by show of hands if you are in at least one of these categories. Yeah, I sure am too. Thank you. So, it's clear that mobile apps are used a lot today, and also in terms of revenue, it's hard to measure, but it's over $100 billion per year since 2020 from all the apps combined. So it seems like a great time to build an app. But there's also the other side. What are the challenges, and why do you need to make your app outstanding? And that's because there are millions of apps already for Android and iOS, and also new apps emerge every month, like more than 100,000 per month. That's more than 3,000 apps per day. And the average user, again, uses only 9 to 10 apps on a daily basis, the most common ones, like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And moreover, on the retention side, the majority of apps are not even used after 3 days after installing them. So it's quite challenging to stand out and to make a good app. But it's still a great time to take your shot because there's a lot of openness, and people, as we saw, are using the phones a lot. So here's how you can do it. We have several options for building an app in 2023 and beyond. We have native apps, cross-platform apps, hybrid apps, and progressive web apps. And we'll see a few more things about each category. Native apps are the ones that you build using the code and technology that's native to each platform, either iOS or Android. And the best thing about them is that you have the best performance and you have access to all the features that these operating systems offer, and they provide to developers to use. So you have kind of a full control. But the downside is, since they are native to Android and iOS, you need to build separate projects. You cannot reuse the code from one platform to another. And then cross-platform apps come to tackle this issue, and they allow you to build mobile apps using the same code base and a variety of other programming languages like JavaScript or C# or Dart. These are some frameworks created on top on the native technologies, and they still offer good performance and user experience, very similar to the ones that native apps offer. Going forward, hybrid apps are a blend between mobile and web development. You can use web technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build your app and wrap it in a native container, I would say, so that you still install it through the App Store and Google Play Store, but when you use it, the app works by providing its functionality through web views. So it's kind of a website embedded in an app. The advantage over classic web apps is that you can still use the hardware features of the phone more than you can in a normal website. But of course, browsers these days also have a lot of capabilities. So from the browser of your phone, or Safari or Chrome, you can still use your camera, you can use location detection, and this brings us to an even simpler alternative, progressive web apps. These are web apps that are adapted to mobile. So they are not delivered through the App Store and Play Store. It's basically like a website or a web application that you can save as a shortcut in your phone's home screen. And then besides using it from there, like with the shortcut, you can still use it offline, which the app cannot be used. And again, has the features that a mobile browser could also implement. So this is kind of the fastest way if you already have a web application. So we want to build outstanding apps, and we have these 4 options. And of course, for making the apps great, there are a few criteria that they need to meet. So let's say on the technical side, can you tell me one criteria that's important for the success of a mobile app? Someone? Yes, speed, great. Performance? UI. Exactly, UI and user experience. And what I also added here, so great choices, like besides performance, like how fast it works, and not only how the UI looks, but how familiar it is for the users compared to the rest of the operating system. You also have functionality and flexibility, like how much does it allow you to build? Does it allow you to use background modes and sensors and everything that a phone has as hardware? And also the stability and reliability, which is not only the lack of bugs and crashes, but also how an app reacts to operating system updates. Because sometimes when a new iOS or Android version comes out, many apps start having random bugs because these new situations were not handled properly. So considering all these factors, in the majority of cases, native and cross-platform apps, because they offer that very similar experience to the operating system, will allow you to create an outstanding app. And of course, hybrid and progressive web apps still have their place for certain use cases, but those are in general the exceptions. So we're going to talk more about native and cross-platform app development. On the native side, we have iOS and Android. Both of them have the SDKs available for developers since 2008, which is 15 years ago. The programming languages, on iOS, it's Swift. It also used to be Objective-C, but Swift is the modern choice. Like, it's a more modern language with more features. Same on Android, we have Kotlin and Java. Kotlin became more popular in the last few years. And as tools for iOS development, you need a Mac and to install Xcode, which is the editor in which you build the app. And for Android, you can also build on a PC. You need to have like good technical specs for the PC. Here's how the iOS building interface looks like. So Swift as a programming language was launched in 2014 by Apple. It has a lot of cool features like optionals and value and reference types and protocols and extensions. It can run together with Objective-C, with C and C++ in the Objective-C runtime. And on the UI side, we have 2 main options to build the UI. We have a framework called SwiftUI, which was launched in 2019, and it looks just like in the image. You have the code on the left and the live preview on the right. And whatever you write in code, you can see and test live. And there's also UIKit, which is the framework they released in 2008, and they continue to support it, of course. It has an interface builder, which looks like this. Like, you can build it with drag and drop. You can also build it directly from code, but with no live preview. Considering the current market state, SwiftUI is probably the better choice. It's already supporting a lot of features, and you can do basically anything with it. This is Xcode, so you have support for debugging. You have instruments for checking the performance of the app and how much bandwidth it uses, how much it stresses the battery. You have built-in support for app signing, so if you want to publish your app to the App Store, you have support for that directly from Xcode, and for the whole release process, so it's really easy to use. On the Android side, we have Kotlin, which was launched in 2011, but since 2019, it became the preferred way of building mobile apps, as Google stated. It has very similar features and syntax to Swift. It has optionals and function types. And one more thing that Swift doesn't have is coroutines. It runs on the Java virtual machine, so it works together with Java and wherever Java works. And it has the same memory handling technique. On the UI side, very similar to iOS, we have XML files, which is the old way, actually, of building it. And this is how it looks. You kind of have an XML layout that you build, and you see a preview on the right, but it's not live. And there's also Jetpack Compose, which is the newer version, which is the equivalent of Swift UI. But since it was launched later, it's still early and it's not so popular yet. It's growing and it will eventually be the preferred way, but that's why XML is the first way here. It's still more stable and used more often. All right, so going through the criteria that we saw earlier, we have performance, and on the performance side, as you would expect, since these are native tools, you have the best performance you can get, and you can also look at the monitoring tools for everything in the IDEs in Xcode and Android Studio. And they use native components directly, so there's no bridging, there's no interface between the native code and what you get at the end. On the user experience side, a very important point is that iOS and Android have different user experience guidelines, even if you just browse to settings or to the installed apps on your phone when you buy it brand new. So you can see that switches look differently, texts and navigation bars, and with native app development, you can really keep that experience and build your apps to be familiar to the user. So if you build an iOS app, it will look like the native iOS apps that Apple created, and the same for Android. So this is the big takeaway here. You can use the native style of each operating system. Then on the functionality side, two main things. You can use the official SDKs for everything that the phone can support. So GPS, Bluetooth, offline storage, there are native support for all of these created by Apple and Google. And also, if you want to integrate a third-party service, let's say you want to build an app that has online payments, you probably don't want to build a payment system yourself and you want to integrate a payment processor. They usually have SDKs and libraries that you can add to your mobile projects and use quite easily. But these SDKs are not so common for cross-platform cross-platform frameworks. And on the reliability side, besides having like more direct access to everything on the platform, you can also try beta versions of both the IDEs, like Xcode and Android Studio, and the beta iOS, beta Android versions before they go public. So you can try that and see if there's anything you need to fix before the new version is launched. You get relevant error messages, so it's quite on point. And of course, there has to be a list of downsides. As we saw earlier, there's no code reusability between the platforms, so you build everything separately. Skills are quite specific because if you learn Swift, you can only use it for iOS and macOS development, and Kotlin is also primarily used for Android. You can also use it for backend, but in general, you have some better options. And not only on the development side, but there's a higher cost also on project management because you will probably have 2 project management boards and different designs, and then after launching your apps, you'll have 2 code bases to maintain. So these are the primary downsides of building a native app. And cross-platform app development comes to try to fix this. For cross-platform apps, we have, again, a few options. These are usually SDKs built on top of what's available on native. We have React Native, which is created by Facebook, was launched in 2015. And it uses JavaScript to build the app. Then we have Flutter, which was launched a bit later by Google, and it uses Dart, which is probably not such a common programming language, such a popular one. And I wanted to also add 2 alternatives to this. One is a bit older, Xamarin, which was at some point in 2016 bought by Microsoft. This allows you to build apps using C# and share the business logic, but you have to build with Xamarin Forms the UI differently for iOS and Android. And the same with Kotlin Multiplatform, which is again from Google. You can reuse the business logic, writing it in Kotlin, but you have to build separate UIs for iOS and Android. Xamarin is a bit less popular nowadays, and Kotlin Multiplatform is still in beta, so we're going to see more about React Native and Flutter going forward. So how React Native works. Its architecture has two main components. It has the JavaScript code, which runs in the background on a separate thread, and it has the native components. They are rendered from the JavaScript code through native iOS and Android components, so they offer the same look and feel. And this is done through a bridge. And this bridge allows them, when you tap on something on the UI, the event is recorded and sent to the JavaScript code, like you can see here in the illustration. It's a payload that then gets processed on the JavaScript side. After doing all the updates, a response is again sent to the UI, and the UI is updated. So the bridge handles this communication between native elements and the JavaScript code. You also use JavaScript for creating the UI, but after you build it, then it's translated to native components using an engine called the Yoga engine, again built by Facebook with React Native. All right. So for building the UI, the UI is based on a Flexbox layout system. It's similar to React for web. You have a tree of elements which are eventually rendered to native components with the Yoga engine. So the main thing is that we have this connection bridge between native elements and the JavaScript code. On the other side, Flutter, it has a similar architecture in a way. It's still based on two main components, but here there's no bridge. There's the Flutter engine, which is based on C and C++, and it's also using the Skia library for 2D rendering. And what this means is that when you create something, it's rendered in a canvas and drawn there without converting it to native UI elements for iOS and Android, and this allows it to be faster on the UI side. And the Flutter framework, which is on top of that, allows you to write the code in Dart, and then that code gets shown on the UI, and then it's also used for processing events and the logic of your app. So again, we have the framework, and then the framework communicates with the engine, which takes care of how your app looks and works. The main UI elements on Flutter are called widgets. Everything is a widget, text, a button, everything that you need to add on the UI, and they are added in a tree structure. So you have a app widget, which is the root, and then from there you can create screens, and screens have elements, and so on. The layout system is in a way similar to React Native because it's based on a POX model, which allows you to build adaptable interfaces for different screen sizes or for portrait and landscape orientation. And the whole UI building process has three phases. The first one, the build phase, is where the tree of elements is created. Then the layout, where for each element, it calculates the size and the position, and then the paint phase where everything is drawn in the UI. So looking at the high-level architecture, we can see that there's the bridge for JavaScript, as we saw earlier, and it connects to both. At the top, we have the UI side, like widgets and canvas and events, and then we have the services, because you also need to be able to access the hardware features like Bluetooth and location and audio and so on. And everything goes through the bridge. And on Flutter, you have widgets, which are directly drawn on the UI, and then platform channels for creating the business logic for location and Bluetooth and everything else that you need to build in your app. And if we look at them side by side, at these criteria plus one more that I wanted to add right at the end. On the performance side, Flutter is a bit faster due to the lack of a bridge, and especially for animations and rendering, it can do a better job than React Native. But they are both like very close to native development if you don't need to build like very extraordinary animations and UI. On the user experience side, I think it's a tie because React Native gets rendered to native components, which give that familiarity. But Flutter is also very flexible in terms of what can you create. You can position elements everywhere on the screen in whatever layout you like, so it's very flexible on that. When it comes to functionality, again, they both offer access to similar features, and you can build almost everything. But if you're a web developer with web experience, you'll have an easier time working with React Native because it's similar to what you use for the web. And if you're a native mobile developer that wants to try cross-platform, it might be easier to start with Flutter. It can be more familiar and easier to learn. On the stability and reliability side, again, not a big difference, but Flutter has fewer potential points of failure compared to React Native, and it also has like better documentation. Google does a better job with updates and fixes and integrating new features after Google, and after, like, for native Android, again, Google releases them, and for iOS, Apple releases them. So whenever something appears on iOS and Android, Flutter and also React Native take care of integrating that. And finally, for the proof of work, like if we look at all the apps out there, React Native being older and a little bit more popular, probably also due to JavaScript, it has more apps on the market, and it can prove that it's a worthy framework if you look at what's there on the market. Okay, so this brings us to what should you choose? But of course, there's no like single answer for everybody, because some of us are developers, some of us are business owners. We can be in a few different situations. So I wanted to talk about these 3 common scenarios. First one, if you're a software developer working for a company and you want to build your career. If you're a freelancer software developer working more with clients and on your own. And if you're a business owner or a leader. So if you're a developer working for a company, there are 2 main things that you need to consider. First, the amount of opportunity in the market. How many jobs are there for native or for cross-platform app development? And although they are quite close, if you take a deeper look, there are a few more job openings on native development. And usually they are coming from companies that are well-known and with a good reputation and years of experience. And that's because they have more like financial power to support it, whereas for cross-platform, they are mostly used by smaller companies or startups that need to be fast to market. They have an idea and they want to build a quick, minimum viable product to test the market. So if you're looking for more stability and to work for bigger, well-established companies, you're probably better learning native iOS or native Android. And these companies, in general, would probably offer you a better salary package or maybe a better set of benefits. Of course, if you want to work in a more dynamic environment, that can also be very fulfilling. Then you can go on the cross-platform route, because there are more options on cross-platform for such companies. So this would be kind of the breakdown. I also wanted to edit this to kind of illustrate why these smaller companies tend to choose cross-platform technologies. And it's because from this project management triangle, you can only choose like 2 of the three elements, and they usually need, they have a fixed budget or a smaller budget, and they need to be fast to market, so they tend to sacrifice a bit of quality, but the difference in quality is not much if your app is not complex. If you are a freelancer, which is a trickier road, then there are some other things to consider. First of all, do you want to specialize in something and then work kind of as a consultant for big names for a longer period of time? Or if you want to be versatile and to take smaller projects, maybe on platforms like Freelancer or Upwork, and then be able to work with different people, with different startups. And if you're more specialized, then you could focus on one native technology, like iOS or Android, but you will have fewer opportunities because in general, such companies also want to hire people internally. You'll still have opportunities and they will be better paid, but in general, the vast majority of opportunities will be on the cross-platform side if you're more versatile and want to work on a variety of things. And going forward with your career, you can also choose or think about if you want to be a developer and always like write the code yourself and be there with the development team, or if you want to be more like a tech consultant with consulting teams of developers that are building apps. And if you're a developer, then again, you can choose both options because you will eventually get very good at one of them and you can learn the others if necessary, but if you're a developer, it might not be. If you want to be a general consultant, then it's probably better to have a wider overview of multiple technologies and to know a bit more about each one. So if you want to go on that route, then it's probably good to start with one and learn the others, invest more in learning. And finally, as a business, sometimes it can be an easy choice because first of all, I want to bust the myth that cross-platform apps always save time because in some situations where apps are very complex, I call them the deal breakers, where there's no way to, I mean, it's not worth it to try and build such an app with cross-platform technologies because you will have a lot of bugs and workarounds to be made. So if you need to work with the sensors of the phone, if you need AR or VR applications, if you want an app that's very reliable, like something with emergency services, you don't want to risk bugs not created by you, but maybe created by the framework. And until they fix the bugs, then you are kind of limited. So in these situations, and also the variety of Internet of Things apps where you connect to different devices via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, it's better and it would take you less amount of time if you build separate iOS and Android apps than to have a cross-platform app and do a lot of workarounds. And on the other side, there are the no-brainers where you have a very simple application like an e-commerce app where you can do some shopping, or a data-driven app. For example, if you install something where you can track the expenses that you make, or something for your car, like the revisions and services and so on. So if they just show information and record information, it will be faster and with minimum risk to build them with a cross-platform technology. So in this case, cross-platform works very well. And then the situations where it's harder to choose, and here it's not clear if the app it's complex enough to force it to be native, or if you can try with cross-platform. And here are a few questions that you need to ask. First, the project timeline and budget. So you can, if you have a fixed team of 4 developers, let's say, of course it would be faster to create an app if all of them work on the same code base, instead of 2 working on iOS and 2 working on Android. But if you can have more developers working on native iOS and Android and cost is not a problem, then you will be able to build those apps at the same time, and you will be, again, fast to market. But on the triangle, of course, you'll have quality and time, and the budget will rise quite a lot. But this is one thing to keep in mind if time is more important for you than the budget, and quality, of course. Then on the strategy side, do you need to build for both iOS and Android at the same time? Or can you maybe start with one and build the other one later? Not sure how many of you are familiar with Clubhouse, but they started, it's a social app, And they started with iOS only, and it was quite hyped a few years ago. They didn't build the Android, so they created a native iOS app. Or you can also build it with a cross-platform technology, and if it gains traction and you have a lot of success with it and the app can handle the features that you want to build on top, then you can rebuild it later with native technologies. That's what Airbnb did. They started their app with React Native, and after a couple of years, they switched to native and they published an entire article about why this was necessary and how it was a big investment, but it was worth it for them. And finally, looking at your technical capabilities, you maybe already have a team or you want to put in place a team that probably has web development skills, then it would be more efficient to look at React Native and try with that instead of having them learn the other technologies. And also, speaking about learning, you also need to consider the timeline of the project, because if you have a project that needs to be out in 3 months, there's not enough time to, let's say you have native developers. There's not enough time to learn Flutter and to build the app and publish it in 2 months. But if you have more time, then at first the team will be slower when they learn the technology, but then after the 3rd, the 4th month, you'll get the return of investment because development will be faster. They would have already learned the technology and the speed will increase on the development side. So there's a lot of information to process here and a lot of scenarios. So in order to make it easier, I built this decision chart. And at the top, we have the situations. And then at the bottom, we have the technologies. And we should start from the top left corner. And the first question to ask you is, are you an enterprise with a long-term vision for the project? And if you are, then you probably also are thinking about a complex project and you want to build it properly, and you have the power to do so, so the best choice for you would be to build native apps at the same time. If you're not such an enterprise, then the next question is, do you need complex or hardware features? Do you need to connect to other stuff? Do you need the camera? Do you need, I don't know, in-app navigation and so on? And if you do, then before jumping again to native, you can search for existing examples, or you can build a proof of concept, because you might get away with a simple implementation on cross-platform, since you are not a big enterprise with a huge budget. And then if you cannot find such examples with cross-platform technologies, then you are forced to go on the native route, and you should ask yourself what's more important, time or budget. And if time is more important, then you will sacrifice some budget, go to build both apps at the same time. If budget is more important, then as we saw earlier, build native apps, but one at a time. Now, if you can find such proof of concepts or examples, we'll see in a moment what that brings us to. But another question to ask is, do you need third-party services or integrations? And as we saw in the beginning of the presentation, most third parties offer libraries for native apps, not for cross-platform frameworks. So again, you need to ask the question about examples or proof of concepts that you might want to build before starting the whole thing. And if you cannot find them, same story. If you can, then the next question to ask you, so where are we now? You're not a long enterprise with long-term vision. You don't need complex features, and you don't need third-party services, or you need them, but you found some good examples, or you build a proof of concept. Now, if your team has web development experience, if it doesn't actually, then it's better to go with the Flutter route. It has more advantages, it's a bit better supported and documented by Google, and it's easy to learn, so go on that route. But if you have web development experience and you know JavaScript, then the next question is it a very, very simple app, like I don't know, similar to a web app? Is it very simple? And if it's not, then React Native directly. Don't try with the hybrid ones, because you'll end up with many workarounds probably. But if it's a really simple app, then if you don't have it already for the web, then you can use Ionic or Cordova, such plugins that allow you to convert the web-related code into a native app, as we saw in a container. Or if you already have a web app, then you can convert it to a progressive web app and start there. Yeah, so this would be the roadmap. And the takeaways for today, first of all, it's a great time to build an app, although there's a lot of competition. It's still, people are open to mobile apps, and you know how they say, like, the best time to start was a few years ago, and the second best time to start is now, so it's better to start now if you haven't already. The options for building mobile apps, native, cross-platform, hybrid, and progressive web apps, with the focus on the main two, because this will allow you to build more and can be more stable. The difference between them, between native and cross-platform, is that native is kind of like a road, a paved road where you can walk, you don't have so many obstacles, but it can be longer, while cross-platform apps can be like a pathway, maybe you hit a few bumps, but it can get you faster maybe to your destination. And the more people walk on it, as the framework grows, the better it gets, the pathway. So looking forward in the future, the pathway will become better and better. As a career choice, you need to think about your options and preferences. Where do you want to work? What kind of app you want to work on? What kind of environment or company? And as a business choice, think about the needs and the possibilities that you have and find the balance between these, because, of course, bigger needs also need like bigger possibilities, so you need to consider that. So the good thing is that we have a lot of options today, and we are not forced on a single route when we want to build a mobile app. And it's better to have more options than to just be limited to one. And neither native or cross-platform will offer you this silver bullet for what you need to build. You need to continuously look at the needs of your project and think about future plans, even if you're just getting started. Think about that, and besides all of this, like whatever you choose, I really encourage you to embrace innovation and to be open to new technologies. Even if you worked with only one in the past, like be open to try another one and see what benefits it can bring you. Try new technologies, embrace innovation, and push the limits of what you can build. And finally, build apps that will make people's lives better, and that's the ultimate goal that I want you to have. Thank you. We still have like 1 or 2 minutes for questions. If
2 or 3 questions.
Yes.
You can ask the questions either in Romanian or in English. If you have a question, just raise your hand and the volunteers will come with a mic.
Yes, there's a question in the back. Okay, so one there and one there.
What's your opinion? The Flutter will disappear in a few years or not?
If Flutter will disappear in a few years. I think Flutter is growing right now, and it will continue to get more and more popular, and it could be used for more and more apps. So I see it having a bright future going forward.
Dane, poți să ne zici unde putem găsi cele mai bune firme care dezvoltă mobile software? Există un astfel de clasament, un top, pentru că mă întreabă clienții și nu știu cum să-i îndrept.
Bun. O să răspund în română la asta. Nu există, sau nu știu eu de un asemenea top, pentru că cele mai bune firme, întrebarea trebuie să vină cu niște criterii. Cele mai bune pentru un anumit scenariu, de exemplu firme care creează aplicații de fintech pentru banking și pentru toată partea asta de payments. Poate sunt anumite firme care sunt bune la asta, alte firme sunt bune pe partea de medical, health apps și așa mai departe. În general, joburile, sau mă rog, dacă vrei să cauți, întrebarea era practic firme cu care să lucrezi ca să creezi o aplicație. Ok. Deci, practic, cineva care să te ajute să faci o aplicație. Bun. Sunt clasamente pe care te poți uita, nu știu să spun acum un nume, Top Romanian App Development Companies, de exemplu, în care în fiecare an este o listă, poți să începi de acolo, dar practic trebuie la fiecare firmă să intri pe website, să vezi ce produse au mai creat, dacă se potrivesc cumva pe aceeași temă cu ce vrei tu să faci. După care, sigur că majoritatea firmelor o să îți aloce un call introductiv în care să discuți mai multe și să vezi dacă e un good match și pe partea de culture fit, dar și pe partea tehnică. Și cred că așa ar trebui făcut. Any more questions? Okay, well, I think that's it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dan.